Today we go back to the very beginning, Genesis chapter 1, the creation of the world. But we're not going to focus on the dramatic parts, the light and the darkness, the waters and the dry land, the creatures and the human beings. We're going to look at verse 2 of chapter 2, which is so brief that it is easy to read straight past it. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. God rested. God made a day holy. Not a place, not a mountain, not a temple, not an altar, a day, a unit of time. The first holy thing in the entire Bible is not a place or an object or a person. It is a moment of rest. Erich Fromm spent years thinking about what this means, and his reading on the Sabbath, developed most fully in a small book called The Forgotten Language, and also in You Shall Be as Gods, is, I think, one of the most radical and important things he ever wrote. Let me start with Fromm's basic observation, which is deceptively simple. The Sabbath is the only institution in the Hebrew Bible that is specifically called holy in the creation narrative. Not the garden, not the first human beings, not the act of creation itself, the seventh day. And the seventh day is holy because nothing happens on it, or rather, because what does not happen is itself the content. The holiness is constituted by rest, by cessation, by the withdrawal of productive activity. Fromm asks, what is being said here? What does it mean to declare a time of not doing sacred? His answer begins with a concept he takes very seriously, the concept of being versus having. We encountered this in our episode on the Tower of Babel. Fromm's distinction between a mode of existence oriented around accumulation, possession, and production, and the mode of existence oriented about experience, presence, and aliveness. The having mode asks, what do I own? What have I built? What can I show for my time? The being mode asks, what am I experiencing? Who am I with? And what is alive in me in this moment? Modern life, Fromm argued, has been almost entirely colonized by the having mode. We measure life by production. We evaluate time by what it yields. Rest is understood as recovery, the necessary pause that allows you to produce more. Even leisure has been commodified, turned into consumption, into activities that can be quantified and optimized and posted. And the Sabbath, Fromm says, is the Hebrew Bible's foundational protest against all of this. The word Shabbat in Hebrew comes from the root meaning to cease or to stop or to desist. It is not the same as rest in the sense of inactivity or sleep. It is the deliberate, chosen, structured cessation of productive work, not because you are tired, not because you have nothing to do, because the seventh day is holy, because time itself, in its natural rhythm, includes a dimension that is not for doing. Fromm points out that the Sabbath commandment in Exodus 20 is given a specific motivation. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. The human week mirrors the divine week. Human beings were invited into the rhythm of God's creation. 6 days of work, 1 day of rest. Not because God gets tired. The text in Isaiah explicitly says God does not grow weary, but because the pattern itself is the revelation. Creation is not all production. The universe at its deepest level includes a pulse of stopping. And the version in Deuteronomy 5 gives an even more socially radical motivation for the Sabbath. It says, remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. The Sabbath is an anti-slavery institution. A slave cannot rest. A slave's time belongs to another. To rest, to stop, to refuse to produce for 1 day in 7 is to assert that you are not a slave, that your time is not owned, that you are a person, not an instrument. Fromm is electric about this. He sees in the Sabbath one of the most ancient and most necessary affirmations of human dignity ever made, not as a religious observance to be completed and checked off, as a structural resistance to the reduction of human beings to their productive function. He goes further. Fromm argues that what is prohibited on the Sabbath, and the rabbinic tradition developed an extraordinarily detailed list of prohibited labors, is essentially any act of domination over nature. Cutting, building, kindling fire, ploughing, harvesting, these are all acts by which the human beings impose their will on the world, shape it, exploit it, and extract from it. On the Sabbath, this is stopped. Not because the world is not there to be shaped, it is. 6 days a week, the whole project of human civilization, building, making, improving, creating, is not only permitted but implicitly endorsed by the 6-day structure of creation. But on the 7th day, human beings step back. They exist in relation to the world rather than in dominance over it. They remember they did not create what they use. They remember that the world is not only raw material. This resonates deeply with Fromm's wider social critique. In his major works, The Sane Society, Escape from Freedom, and To Have or To Be, he traced what he saw as the pathological consequences of a culture that had made production and consumption the whole of human meaning. Alienation from work, alienation from each other, the reduction of human beings to consumers and producers with no acknowledged space for what they simply are. The Sabbath in Fromm's reading is the weekly correction. It says, you are not only what you make, you are not only what you own, you are not only what you can show for your time. 1 day in 7, you simply are. There is a concept in later Jewish mystical tradition that Fromm returns to with great affection, the idea of the Sabbath as a foretaste of the world to come. The Sabbath in this reading is not just a rest from the week. It is a rehearsal of a different mode of being altogether, a mode in which doing gives way to being, in which having dissolves into presence, in which time is experienced not as something to be filled and spent, but as something to be inhabited. Fromm was not a religious man in the traditional sense. He did not observe the Sabbath in the orthodox way, but he was profoundly serious about what it represented, about the civilizational wisdom embedded in the institution. He believed that the modern West had forgotten something that the Hebrew Bible knew, that the rhythm of rest is not an interruption of human life, but a constitutive part of it. And he worried that a culture which had lost this rhythm, which had turned every hour into an opportunity for production or consumption, was producing human beings who were increasingly unable to simply be, who filled every silence with noise, who could not be alone, who experienced stillness not as rest but as threat. The Sabbath is the practice of recovering that capacity, the capacity to stop, to be present, to exist in time without trying to extract something from it. I want to close with a detail that Fromm doesn't mention but that I find deeply resonant. The creation narrative in Genesis 1 is structured around a repeated phrase. Each day of creation ends, and God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the first day, the second day, the third day. Each day is marked as good. The light is good. The dry land is good. The living creatures are good. And on the 6th day, after the creation of human beings, the text says, God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Very good. The whole creation with human beings in it. Very good. And then the 7th day. And what does God see on the 7th day? He rests. He blesses. He makes it holy. The Sabbath is what comes after very good. It is silence after the music. It is a space in which the creation can be what it is, not being added to, not being improved, not being used, simply existing in its goodness without anything more being required of it. Perhaps that is what holiness is, the moment when what exists is allowed to be enough.